Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. It is an emergency podcast. Welcome to the Deck Show. We've never done this before. You may have been expecting reality bites. That's what we'd normally release today. But as many of you probably noticed, there's been a bit of a world-shaking event in IT over the last few days, and we are here to respond to it. We've got an amazing guest. We're going to get to him shortly. But Tim, as you know, mate, I had the
Mm,
day off on Friday.
yeah.
Imagine my delight when I lie in, I pick up my phone and I see an incident that may impact us, may impact the team, may impact the organization. What was your experience on Friday, Tim?
Mine was the same. I was out and about, I was real curious to see what the impact was going to be here at Nexthink. And to be honest, Tom, I have not heard a single incident of us having any struggle. And that's maybe due to configuration, maybe due to products we use, but was more interested to see how our visibility and our customers handled it. And there's some really cool stories coming out of it.
There are. It was I didn't know how the day was going to pan out either.
Mm,
I expected, being involved in our communications and marketing, that there would be some official response. What I didn't necessarily anticipate as soon as I saw the story was what a kind of impressive and amazing response it would be, and what a stir it would create, and what a testimony, I think, to the power of preventative IT it would prove. To that end, let me welcome Gaurang Ganatra, our colleague, to the show. Welcome, Gaurang. Thank you so much for making the time and jumping on the show. We're really happy to have you on.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Tom and Tim. I've been listening to your podcast since they've been there, and yeah, it's very exciting to be over here.
cool.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a delight to have you on. And look, in terms of as I said, I mentioned my Friday off. I kind of it remained a Friday off because you were one of the people who were jumping on the story, producing quality insight, quality commentary, bringing together some of the stories of our customers. So I think just to begin, Grant, introduce yourself briefly and what you do here, and then maybe walk us through what that day was like to you a little bit.
Sure. So currently, I'm a director of product marketing right now within Nexthink. But I've been with Nexthink for quite some time, 9 years to be precise. And for as long as I remember, I've been in this industry of digital workplace support. Right? So even before Nexthink, I used to be a product manager for digital workplace support services. And obviously, before I joined the marketing team, I led the entire customer success team for the global MSP business that Nexthink has, which has over 270 accounts, right? So I am extremely interested in learning about customers, their digital workplace support models, and how they are using Nexthink within that, right? So yeah, that's me.
And what would you say is the current consensus over the kind of CrowdStrike Windows outage? What if we had to sort of, I mean, in 2024, a few days can be a lifetime, right? And it's almost enough time for a settled consensus at this point. How would you articulate what we currently know about what happened? Are there any sort of significant updates, even over the last couple of days, which are worth underscoring in your view?
Yeah, so look, here's what's happened. Okay, CrowdStrike, I mean, as most of you know, is one of the really a big security organization, right, which helps organizations secure their devices, the servers, right, and applications as well. Now, CrowdStrike, they've got something called as a Falcon. It's one of the products, and this Falcon sensor, which is present on all the devices, is responsible for detection and response to threats on the devices. Right now, this particular Falcon sensor, it had an update which was erroneous, right? And applications like CrowdStrike, what they do is obviously the driver and all is certified by Microsoft, which is why it operates at the kernel level, which is like a really core aspect of the operating system. But what they do is, because they have to deal with day zero threats and evolving security threats which are out there in the world, they download dynamic definition files in the form of updates, right?
Mhm.
And what Falcon Sensor does is that it refers to these files to keep itself updated on the new threats and even act upon it, right? Now, on Friday, July 19th, right, early in the morning, one of these definition files, and it's called as channel file 291, which is now, very, very infamous. Everybody knows about it.
Mhm.
It had an erroneous update, and that crashed the systems, right? Now, CrowdStrike, obviously, it released a new update a few hours later that fixed this channel file 291, but a lot of damage had already been done by then. And what happens is, in scenarios like this, right, some of the systems are spared, right, because they have those configurations that allows them to fix these issues with just a mere restart. But then there are some of the other devices whose configurations do not allow that, right? And what happens is that they go into this a loop of reboot again and again, right? Because that's how the configuration of the systems are, and they require a manual safe boot before the changes to this erroneous file can be fixed, right? So essentially, what happened is that all the devices which had CrowdStrike on them, and that woke up early in the morning when this issue was already going on before the CrowdStrike released their updates, they started crashing, right? So there was a blue screen, what we generally call the system crashes as.
Mhm.
People were unable to log into their devices, the systems that are being used out there in the business, that are customer facing, those systems were down, and there was a lot of disruption.
Mhm. And in terms of global impact at the moment,
Yeah.
what would you say we're looking at?
So I don't know if you know this or not, but this outage that happened on Friday, it is being considered the largest outage in the history of information
Wow.
technology, right? So that's the scale of it, right? It's mind boggling. Microsoft says that there are 8.5 million devices which are impacted, and there were 10,000 flights which are cancelled, more than 1 million workers which were unable to work for over 2 days, and the financial impact that a lot of these analysts are giving is estimated to be around $10 billion, right? So
Ooh,
it's just mind boggling, right? What this issue has caused to the global economy.
that's wild. That's wild. And I want to underscore it has been a proud few days to be a next thinker, and
Mm.
people are going to hear shortly about some of the incredible ways we were able to protect our customers, and we are proud of that. But I don't want to seem that that's overlooking the impact on people's lives, the impact on businesses, finances, and the global economy at large that this has caused. It's obviously extremely serious. Um, Tim, in as we say, all your years in IT, um, have you ever seen anything like this? Or I mean, as Graham says, this is unprecedented. But anything you've seen that comes near, and any remembrances there?
So I told you my first thoughts, am I going to be able to log in and are we impacted? What are our customers dealing with? My third thought was, thank God I'm not back in enterprise IT because I've lived through so many of these. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say, not at this scope and scale, but this happens all the time. I put out some controversial statements every once in a while that everything IT touches dies or breaks. We need to drive towards the death of the help desk. We don't need a help desk when we have modern technology. But
Mhm.
in instances like this, it's an example of what happens when you don't have the right test rigor, when you don't have the right release management processes, when you don't have the right change management. I can go down a list of things that happened to us internally where we didn't have visibility. We deployed an SMS update to 450 people and it went to 45,000 instead. And
Mhm.
by the time we stopped it, it had already gone to 7,000, but we didn't know who they were. We couldn't back it out. We didn't know if we would break them by backing it out. It was an absolute mess. It took us a week to recover from it. We had a VDI meltdown where just by adding new sessions, we had a configuration in the back end that caused a capacity and a load problem on the storage arrays. And we crashed over 8,000 VDI sessions because we added capacity past the threshold. and we had an app upgrade failure that went out and started crashing applications, but only on certain machines. And we found, actually, that was with Nexthink. We found an SMS SCCM update had failed on certain machines and was causing a crash. So the fact that it was a vendor that caused this doesn't change the fact that it was an IT update to an IT operating system done without visibility and without the ability, or perhaps the we don't know what testing rigor they did, um, but it was done in a way where it wasn't phased. Right, everybody got it at the same time, so it was certainly a technology problem and a process problem, and very likely a people problem. But to answer your question, I hate to say it, but it happens all the time. And it's actually a good segue to Garang. You wrote an awesome article, a blog up on the website that I've posted out on social, and it demonstrates that kind of the second thought that I had in the morning. How is Nexthink helping our customers, and how it played a pivotal role in detecting and resolving that issue for consumer goods company that's a customer of ours. And I'm curious how that materialized. How did you get your information? Talk us through how Nexthink was able to respond so quickly to it for them, and how you were able to get that update out so quickly.
Yeah, just like you, Tim, right? I was very curious as well. So come this morning, 6 a.m., I wake up to this news of this global outage, and I immediately reached out to a few customer accounts that I was connected with to find out what was happening with them, right? And how are they using Nexthink. And every customer that had CloudStrike deployed was reporting extremely high B odds, right? In the range of 10% to 30% of the devices. They were all, crashing. And to the few Nexthink customers that I talked to, right, they were made aware of this issue with Nexthink alerts. Right now, for those of you who know Nexthink, right, Nexthink alert, along with Cloud Insights that we have, it detects issue based on cross organizational statistics. So when a certain number of devices crash, or when one device crashes multiple times, the alert immediately informs IT. Uh, Now, for some of the customers, they had also created the ITSM integration, which means that as soon as these alerts occurred, they automatically opened up a lot of proactive tickets for them as well, right? And with this deluge of ticket, especially on an issue like blue screens and system crashes, the customers, I think they were immediately informed that there's something wrong within the environment, right? So they didn't have to open up the news channel to find out from there that there was something wrong. But it's also important to understand why this system was crashing, right? So one is obviously Nexthink proactively told them, right, even before the users had a time to reach out to the IT, that there was something wrong with their devices. But what Nexthink has is also something called as a real-time device timeline view, right? Where you can explore all the events that are happening on the devices in a very chronological order. So while you see the devices crashing, you can also see what are the changes made to the device right before that, right? And it was very evident that there was a
Mm.
CrowdStrike update and a couple of Windows update as well before the system started crashing. So that gave them a good indication of where the issue might be. But by that time, obviously, I mean, everybody knew, right, that there was a problem with the CrowdStrike update. Now, for most of the customers, it's very important question to be able to see which of my devices crashed or are crashing, and which ones are back online, and which locations and users are really impacted, where I should dispatch some sort of support on priority, right? Now we know that, as since you've been in IT team, right, the amount of energies that we can focus on is very limited, right? IT teams are not do it all. They're not present everywhere, which means that to be able to understand what category of devices should we really focus on is a very important question for everyone, right? And that's what Nexting customers were doing, right? They were looking at locations, they were looking at devices, and seeing what was the last time when those devices logged in. Was it in the morning of 19th July? Are they still logged in? There's a consumer goods company that is mentioned in the blog, right? And even though their users and devices in the east were impacted, and while the devices in the western Europe had not yet woken up, this organization, right, they immediately went into action, right? So they were able to see in real time, what devices were impacted. And they initially used a lot of custom dashboards and automation to find out devices that might still have the faulty file update from this CrowdStrike, and it might be at a risk of crash. So while I was talking to the account team, right, I got constant updates on what they were doing, how they are
Mm.
fetching the reports from Nexthink, and that was a blog.
It's interesting to not just hear those stories, but also in watching social media and news feeds, the stories of large enterprises that are not our customers. There's the most profitable airline in the United States. I won't use their name. They've already lost $163 million, and they're still canceling flights because the impact of their applications being down for a while, they now don't know where their flight crews are. They have no idea where the pilots and flight attendants are in the world to be able to assign them to a flight at a certain airport. So they're still canceling flights because of this outage. And they've got now additional expenses on hotels and meals for passengers, flight refunds for passengers. It just, for me, it highlights the impact that this is not just a software problem that affected a customer, it's affecting the customer's customers, right? It affected CrowdStrike's customers, their revenue generating for CrowdStrike, but it's also affecting their external customers. So the experience of these employees and how they can interact, the digital world is everything for their jobs and for their ability to just execute business. So the steps that they're taking now, the manual efforts, the tracking of flight crews is monumental. I'm curious if you could walk us through then for the customers that are um, uh, dealing with visibility or that do have visibility with Nexthink. Talk us through some of the steps that were taken once the problem was detected in that use case for that consumer goods company. How did they deal with it?
Yeah. So first of all, to be clear, right, Nexthink cannot help these devices if they are not booting up, right? So the
Right.
devices which needed safe boot, there was not much Nexthink could do, right? But what was really important for some of the Nexthink customers was, you know, the devices, not just the devices which are, the employee facing, but also the devices which are customer facing, right? I talked to this one banking customer, and unfortunately for this customer, all the retail branches, they had a CrowdStrike installed on the devices which were in the retail branches, right? And they were using Nexthink to see in real time how many of them are offline, and as soon as they came back online, they had a sigh of relief, right? Believe it or not, a Nexthink report was sent to the CEO every 15 minutes to keep him updated that the disruption to the business is limited to just a few devices that we are doing, right? The consumer goods company that I've mentioned in the blog, right? It was focused on using Nexthink to see in real time the devices in US and Europe which are not awake yet, right? So what they did is obviously they use the library pack and some of the custom dashboards. At that time, we didn't have a library pack out, but they started using Nexthink to immediately understand what are the devices which are at risk, and if the device is at risk and it's not crashing yet, but it still has the faulty update present on the devices. There was an automation available within Nexthink that helped them, either delete that or rename it based on the preference of that particular customer. After turning off the CrowdStrike anti-tampering is disabled, right? So, those are some of the examples that I could
Mm.
immediately say.
I put myself back in the world of IT with an update like this. The company that's impacted in the initial moments of the problem don't even know what the cause is yet. They are scrambling. It can take hours, if not dozens of hours to just correlate to which vendor to call, who caused this, right? There's no visibility to even understand that cause and effect or the change that happened. There's nothing to go on except for your help desk that's getting calls from different areas of the world. So even that valuable time is wasted just troubleshooting to see, what change was implemented. You're checking your own change control to see if your internal IT teams caused it, and then you're trying to figure out the real root cause. So it's I just I, I'm I even to this day I'm still having those I won't call them nightmares, but thank God I'm not in that world anymore because it's so
Yeah.
painful. Um, you talked a little bit about the library pack, and it's interesting because it is a testament to the nimbleness of not only our product but our product teams. How does the library pack actually work, and what is its impact through dashboards and automations?
Yes. So the library pack that Nexthink released, a few hours after, we got to know about the issue. It has two things, right? So number one, it helps the customer identify the devices which might still be at a risk due to the presence of that erroneous CrowdStrike update. And if the CrowdStrike anti-tampering is disabled, number two, it also has an automation that allows you to rename or delete that sys file in question, right? That is causing this issue globally, right? So that's what the library pack has. Yeah, it's fantastic how our product team very quickly
Hmm.
got together. They started working with a couple of customers initially to try and test it out, and then once we felt that this was safe, battle hardened, we had to release it as a library pack for everybody else to use.
So, Gaurang, we've talked about the help that Nexthink gave our customers, not only through our product but through our teams. Is there an estimation of how many other customers of Nexthink we were able to help over the last couple of days?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, remember, right? We've got a lot of customers in US,
Mm.
and thankfully, US was spared a little bit, especially Nexting customers. And I see from the telemetry just before this call, right? I was able to see that there are more than 150 customers of Nexting who are using this library pack. So while we are trying and reaching out to all the customers and trying and understanding their feedback on how they've been using Nexting, we at least see, right, that there are 150 customers who are using this Nexthink library pack to help themselves and make sure that the issue is completely eradicated from their environment.
And Garang, I mean, when we spoke in the aftermath, I was asking to what extent this sort of illustrated the power of proactive IT management and automation. And you kind of pointed out to me that it's a bit more about observability and what we might even call, rather than just proactive, preventative IT management. I mean, would you say that's the general illustration that we can take from these case studies?
Uh, uh, Absolutely. I mean, you're 100% right? And nothing can illustrate this more than a discussion that I just had yesterday. And I was talking to this technology customer who just 3 months back, right, with the help of Nexthink, they were able to identify that 40% of their population did not have the BitLocker key, which is backed up on Azure. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, as you know, BitLocker is used for encryption of the devices, and it has a certain key which users tend to forget, and sometimes the support needs to fetch it from the Azure. So if it's not backed up on the Azure, uh, the support team would not know what is the key. Right now, during this outage, what this customer was doing is that obviously they had to safe boot a few devices, and what they did is that they sent out a note, an SMS note to all the users. And guess what? Right? What was the first step of that standard operating procedure after hard reset? Right? It was entering that BitLocker credential.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular customer, they thanked us that just 3 months back, right? They updated, they backed up this Azure key using Nexthink, and it was only because of that all the users who, even though they had to do a manual safe boot, they were still able to enter the devices. Otherwise they wouldn't be able to get out of this pickle at all, right? So this again, while it's a this issue highlights why being preventative at some point of time is going to really help you, right? And while this issue is highlighted because it's a global one, right, I see issues like this every day, right? Anytime organizations are making a change to the devices without Nexthink or a way to really understand the full implication of the change for the users, it's very difficult to understand what's going to happen next, right? Whether it's a small thing such as an update of an app version or as big as something like Windows 11 migration. If you can proactively understand what is happening or affecting the user's productivity, you can immediately act upon it, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, So I've been hearing this, most of my career, which is the best ticket is the one that was never created.
That's certainly true in this instance, eh? Um, right. I mean, hopefully we don't see anything on this scale ever again, and if that's improbable, we don't see it soon. But are there like an analogous processes which bring similar dangers, maybe on a smaller scale, that we should keep in mind when, organizations should keep in mind if they're trying to invest in ways to avoid incidents like this happening in the future? Where should they be? What should they be particularly alert to, do you think?
Yeah, I'm still seeing a lot of organizations like, and they're doing these big projects. For example, I see many customers have still not moved all of their apps to cloud, so they're moving them from one private cloud to another. I see customers are not fully aware of the impact of hybrid work on their employees. So even though they might have hybrid work as a policy, they're not looking at how these employees are really experiencing when they are not working or when they are not in office, right? I see a lot of organizations which are still not migrated to Windows 11, and there are so many projects like this, right, that are going to happen in the organizations, in the future, which have a potential to cause a similar disruptions for the users,
Mhm.
right? And with something like Nexthink, it would be extremely easy for them to first assess, right, and then plan these sort of changes so that you can transform the user's workplace without breaking anything. um but yeah, it's going to keep on happening, right, till IT has a good visibility into users experience.
Absolutely. And Tim, one for you, mate, to finish off, give you the last
Mm.
word there. If there was one learning you think listeners or organizations could take from this incident, what would it be?
I think it's the same comment that I've made quite a bit around moving your help desk either offshore or to cheaper labor. It's not the solution. It's just giving somebody else your problem. It's the same thing with moving apps to the cloud, right? It's you're not removing the problem. You're just trusting someone else to not cause the problem. And you now have even less visibility than if you had kept it internally. So just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean you don't need to have the lights on and see what's happening in your environment. Visibility is everything, independent of where the activity is going on. So I just, it all, for me, it still all comes down or comes back to turning the lights on and making sure you've got full command of your environment.
Absolutely. So, guys, I think we're just about out of time, and I would really love to try and get this edited and published today. I think the world needs to hear what Nexthink has to say, what you
Yeah.
have to say today, Graham. And
Yeah.
look, thank you not only to you, Gaurang, but to all of our colleagues who are who have been working so hard with customers to reduce the impact and really make all Nexthinkers proud. We really appreciate you, and keep it up. Thank you, Gaurang. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how Nexthink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nexthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.